All right, we're almost done with this class. You guys are so close. You're on lesson 5 out of 6 before the project. And today we're going to be covering efficiency with iteration. Let's review. What is sequencing? Following a set of instructions. But what's selection? We just learned that, so I'm going to give you guys a second because I know you can remember. So that is processing input to different outputs. And now it's time to learn iteration. You might remember this from when I mentioned iterative development, how in computer science, when you make a mistake, you have to go back and iterate through your steps. Iteration is a repetition of something until a certain criteria is met. For today's lesson, there's no starter code, so just follow along with the video. So feel free to go open your own blank code right now, but there is nothing visual, no design. I purely want to focus on concepts here. So you'll notice in the control section, we already did ifs and if-else statements. But now it's time to learn iteration, and we have both a while loop and a for loop. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to pick a number. So my favorite number is 7. So it's going to iterate up until 7 times. So the variable I is 0. So for each time that I goes through the loop, its I plus plus is equivalent to adding 1 to I. And so until I is at 7, this will run. But when I is at 7, it'll stop. And the way we're going to keep track of this is we are going to print something to the debug console. If you are not remembering what this is, definitely go back and check out the toolbox videos that kind of show you how to use code.org. It'd be super helpful. So now let's watch. Let's see, is this really going to work 7 times? So let's take a run. So that moved super fast, so remember to play with the speed settings, but for each iteration, you could see the yellow highlight. It printed 0, it printed 1. It's printing 2, 3, 4, etc. So you kind of understand how it's iterating through rather than you just saying print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or add 1 to I 7 times. So that's for loops. So while loops run until something isn't true. So we can use a similar variable here, but this can basically run infinitely unless we tell it to stop. So let's make a new variable. So let's call this test, and let's have test equal 7. So now we want 7 to get smaller. So while test is greater than 0, we want to subtract 1 from the test, and we want to print it to the console. So console.log test. So that'll print it to the test, and then test minus minus will subtract 1. So let's see, will this work? So first we're going to start off with the for loop. It's going to print through there. We can speed that up a little bit. You can see that it's printing. It stops at 6, but now it's time for the while loop. So test, it's going through and it's printing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. So what if we didn't have a condition that stopped? So what if we just said while test is greater than, or while test is less than 0? So while test is, let's just say, less than 8, which is always. Let's see what happens. It doesn't run because we just created an infinite loop. So what that means, and these are very common, so don't worry if it happens to you, is that it's basically going to run forever unless we stop it, which is why it's super important to make sure that you're making good use of your conditionals and a condition that's true. In general, since this is basic coding, and I would prefer to use a for loop because we can do it a fixed number of times and we have full control over it. But if that doesn't work for you, test it out. Again, make use of the console log now when you test this on your own with as many or as little numbers as you want, and the control. So console.log, and there you guys have it. You got this.